Good morning. Here I am once again for World History by Tom Padula live on Facebook, and it is Tom Padula from, of course, YouTube channel and also from Insegna Booksellers. So it's lesson number 59. Quite a few I've done so far, and it's the 1st of December 2022, and here in Melbourne we celebrate the official beginning of summer. So spring is behind us. It's been a very wet one up to now, but what can you do? Every season has its own particular way of handling itself. Exactly like what we do here with this World History program series, because it is a series. It's we sort of I don't repeat things that have gone back. The occasional mention, but it's new material every single day, every single time I come on. And thanks to all those contributors, from books and the tablets, and my own interpretation of things. You do need a bit of help from people who've done the work, similar work before. It's an important one, and this one here is we finished with Marco Polo, so that was the 13th century. So once we begin with the 14th century, things start to really move. Because we're leaving the Middle Ages behind, slowly but surely. And once the states sort of form, as in Europe, we're talking about Europe here, once they form in the states, then the idea of nationalism comes in. And the monarchs generally also relied more and more on the advice, or at least the opinions, of those people who supported them. And the main idea was for the king to rule with the opinions and the advice of the aristocracy around him. So there were special people, and basically the workers, worked. That's what they did. And, if you're a soldier, then you were a soldier. So very defined areas of activity. So the beginning of nationalism, the seeds of democracy, the beginning of nationalism, what does that mean? So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at also China. I'm concentrating on the dynasties at the moment, and also the regions of China, the provinces of China. We want to know a little bit more about the actual country in terms of the various areas within it and how China developed to be what it is today. What are the cultural parameters of the past? And how did this great nation came to be, and how did the rulers rule, and were the people happy? Were they, did they live well? All those questions, and why did they fight amongst each other? So that's we're there. And then, of course, I'm going to look at Africa. As I said, we do North America, North and South America, and all of America before, and I'll come back to that continent again. But for the moment, I want to concentrate on the various states of. I'm going to start with South Africa, because that's right at the bottom, and we'll take it from there, as we move along. Because we want to know a lot more about Africa. It's important. It is important that we bring all of the world together as one, because we are going to explore the planets of our universe. We are going there for sure. And we might find that there may be some people out there They might look differently from us. They might be more advanced or less so. Whoever, we don't know yet, but we're definitely going that way. Okay, and of course then I will continue with Before the Invasion here in Australia, and Banjo Patterson and Henry Lawson, and I finally come to my travels and a few more pictures from the north, the travelling that I did in the north in July. Okay, and basically that's it, and it's 11:30 and I'm going to start. Welcome to anyone who comes on. Okay, so here we go. The beginning of nationalism. No nations but many tribes in the Dark Ages. Yeah, it seems natural to us today that people should live and work together as members of a certain nation. But it was not always so. A nation is a large group of people who usually, though not always, speak the same language, have the same customs and traditions, and have lived for a considerable time in a certain area of country. In the Dark Ages, people lived in tribes rather than nations. When St. Augustine landed in Kent in 597, after the birth of Christ, men said that they were West Saxons, South Saxons, or East Saxons, or that they belonged to the North Folk or the South Folk of the Angles, not that they were Englishmen. Then, just as the different tribesmen were beginning to think of themselves as Englishmen, the Danes arrived, and then they in turn began to mix with the English. The French-speaking Normans arrived to lord it over Englishmen and Danes alike. And if you look at the series on Netflix, maybe on other platforms as well, but on Netflix I've seen the story of the Vikings and of this particular time in history. Very interesting. I recommend it highly if you're interested in history. Saxons and Normans become Englishmen. As the years passed, however, the Normans too began to turn into Englishmen. It was natural that they should take less interest in France after their old home. Normandy was lost in the reign of King John. In 1272, John's grandson, Edward I, became king. He was the first king of England since the Saxons, Harold, who had habitually spoke English, the language of the great majority of his subjects. From his time onwards, the old bitterness between Saxons and Normans gradually disappeared as the two races intermarried and began to think of themselves first and foremost as Englishmen. Early in the Middle Ages, as we have seen, each baron on his own manor or manors was almost as powerful as a king. The result was that many men felt more loyalty to their lord and to their fellow villagers than to their king and nation as a whole. The lord of the manor even had his own law courts in which local cases were tried, so they acted as judges as well. Gradually, however, the barons became less powerful and the king more so. The King Henry II, for example, who tried to gain power from the church, succeeded in taking away much power from the barons. They didn't from the church, but he took it away from the barons. So that's the early part of the 14th century. Baronial law courts give way to royal courts. He sent learned judges travelling about the kingdom to try local cases in his own royal courts. As he appointed 4 men in each town and 12 men in each 100 as journeymen to help the travelling judges, the common people naturally preferred the king's justice. A villain or a peasant was more likely to receive a fair trial from the king's judge and jewellery, then from the court of his own landlord, who was often directly interested in the verdict. So that's where we are at the moment. Now, let's have a look a bit more. We'll do a bit more. But notice, the way the nation slowly built. It wasn't built in a day. It is over a period of, a few hundred years. Edward I conquers Wales. Again, here we are looking at English history. This national feeling was sometimes shown by warfare against neighbouring people. Do you remember what happened to the Britons after the Anglo-Saxon invasions? Many of them retreated to the wild mountains in the north of Wales, where for hundreds of years they maintained their independence against English. Danes and Normans alike. They were conquered, however, by the English-speaking Edward I, who fought two hard campaigns against the Welsh prince, Llewellyn. From soon afterwards, in 1284, Edward's son gave birth to a son in Carnarvon Castle in Wales. Holding the baby up before the Welsh crowd, Edward shouted, "I give you a Welsh prince who has been born in Wales and can speak no word of English." Since that day, the Welsh people, although they have kept their own ancient language, have been loyal subjects of the kings of England. So the Welsh people became loyal subjects. Edward I, the hammer of the Scots. Edward I also fought a long war against Scotland, during which he captured and removed to London the famous Stone of Scoan, upon which Scottish kings had always stood at their coronation. Though he subdued Scotland for a few years and hanged William Wallace, the brave Scottish leader Edward I could not conquer the country. The hammer of the Scots, as the hammer of the Scots, as he was sometimes called, died within sight of the border while marching north once more against his old enemies, and his son Edward II was utterly routed by the Scottish king Robert Bruce at the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314. Scotland and England were not finally united until 1707. The process we have been outlining in the chapter, the growth of national feeling and unity, began to take place during the Middle Ages. In other countries also, though nowhere was it as rapid as in England. Okay, so the English actually succeeded in forming the first nation. And we'll look at the next one will be France, of course, but we'll look at it next time. So that's it for this chapter here dedicated to democracy. Well, the beginnings of democracy, really. It wasn't, that's how it was. Okay, so that's that. What will I do here? I'll put them all over here. Okay. Next one is, of course, the dynasties of China. Just a little reminder. The Shang dynasty, 1600 before Christ to about 1100, for about 500 years. The Zhou dynasty, 1100 to 256 BC, and it's called, it divided into Western Zhou and Eastern Zhou dynasties. Okay, the Qin dynasty, and I've been watching the Empire of Qin. That's the Qin dynasty gave the name to China. The Han dynasty, Western and former Han, 206 BC to 8, about 200 years. Then the Jin AD, Eastern or later Han dynasty, So there was the Han dynasty as well. The Han dynasty, then the three kingdoms, then 6 dynasties, then the Sui dynasty and the Tang. But I have here a list of the dynasties in by looking up you know, your the dynasties in your iPhone or in you know, whatever. If you got a Samsung, doesn't matter. Whatever phone you have, as long as it's available to you and you can look these things up, it's good. Okay, here we've got. It starts from the top. So the latest one was the oh God, what have we got here? I'll just read them. Show less, no. Liang dynasty, Southern Qi dynasty, later Jin, later Liang, later Northern Wei. That's another one. The Han dynasty, and then, of course, the Zhang dynasty, which became very powerful. Then we said the Han dynasty, the Northern Wei, later Liang, later Jin. What have I done here? They were mixed up. Oh no, I said Qin, Song, Ming, Shang, Sui, Qin, one history, Xia dynasty, and then Yuan, there are more. Quite a few, but the idea is that you look it up. Okay, that's why I bring these things up so that you can do, you know, you can proceed. But before we do anything else, of course, we're going to do a little bit on China itself. And this is the Zheng Wen reign period. It's called the benign administration. Benign meaning nice, you know, with justice and, you know, in favor of the people, not too harsh. Emperor Taizong, Li Shimin, enjoys a prestige which is quite high. When he was young, he assisted his father in establishing the Tang dynasty. Very talented as a general in war, he wisely empowered capable persons to assist him in governing the country. He named the period of his reign Zheng Guang, 627 to 649. Drawing lessons from the downfall of the Sui dynasty, Emperor Taizong carried out many enlightened policies and measures beneficial to the country and the people, which consolidated the state power of the Tang dynasty. Tang dynasty restored social stability and boosted the economy. Therefore, the reign was termed the benign administration of the Zheng Guang reign period. By Empress Taizong knew that a well-ordered administration needed capable people and a wide range of expert opinion. You know, sort of looking at this here now. So Zheng Guang, he named this period, he ruled from 627 to 649, which is 22 years. Okay, so he restored, what did he do? He did quite a number of things. Emperor Taizong carried out many enlightened policies and measures beneficial to the country and the people. which consolidated state power of the Tang dynasty, restored social stability, and boosted the economy. Therefore, the reign was termed the benign administration of the Zheng Tuan reign period by historians. So historians have given it this name. Emperor Taizong knew that a well-ordered administration needed capable people and a wide range of expert opinions. So he made he made good use of capable people, no matter what their backgrounds were. He once said that using a bronze mirror, one could tidy one's clothes. Using history as a mirror, one could know the way of governing a country. Using people as a mirror, one could tell right from wrong. So they mirrored themselves in actions with what was happening before in this reign of benign reign. So that's that. Emperor Taizong implemented many measures that enjoyed the support of the people, such as joining countries and prefectures together to reduce expenditure, letting peasants have a certain amount of land, and reducing the burden of corvée labour to ensure that the peasants had time to work on their land. Citing an ancient saying, Emperor Taizong said that the emperor was like a boat and the people were like water. Water could carry the boat, but it could not also capsize itself. So in other words, you can't ruin yourself if you're successful. You can't see the changes sometimes. If you don't follow the changes, then it won't happen. So that's that. Emperor Taizong won the support of all the minority peoples. There you are. He won the support of all the minorities. The ethnic groups in the north called him Great Khan. Great. The emperor sent Princess Wen Cheng to the king of Tubo in Tibet, which made the relations between the Han and Tibetan people closer and contributed to the stability of China as a multi-ethnic country. So they, Zheng Tuan reign period, very interesting, is an enlightened monarch. Well, that's the way it is. But you notice over the years, the dynasties change. Why? It's always changes all the time. Whether you like it or not, you have a period of peace and a period of confusion. Let's have a look at South Africa now, okay? The Republic of South Africa, occupying the southern part of the continent of Africa, with the Atlantic washing its southern western shores and the Indian Ocean to the south and southeast. So Namibia, former German Southwest Africa, which South Africa controls in defiance of the United Nations. That's not true anymore. But anyway, you'd have to check it out. I'm not sure about African policies at this stage. But I'll read to you what I've got. And once we do that, we'll be able to sort it out whether South Africa now is totally independent of all other nations in Africa, and whether they have other areas to rule. I don't think so. I think that the nation state now that's it for all countries. In the Indian Ocean in the southern and southeast Namibia. Former German southwestern southwest, which controls and defines of the United Nations, lies to the northwest. Botswana, to the north, Zabiwend. Botswana to the north. Zimbabwe, Mozambique and Swaziland to the northeast, with Lesotho, a small mountainous enclave lying on the western side of the massive Drakensberg Range. South Africa consists of 4 provinces: Cape of Good Hope, or Cape Province, Transvaal, Orange Free State, and Natal. The administration capital is Pretoria. Transvaal, the legislative capital, Cape Town, Cape Province. So that's so far we've gone with South Africa and just given the directions. The country has great natural wealth in minerals, its principal export being gold, diamonds, copper, tin, silver, asbestos as well. Wood, wines, gold, wool, winter, wines and spirits, fresh and canned fruit and canned fish. It's not a bad place, really. The Cape of Good Hope was first reported by Bartholomew Diaz in 1487, and in 1632, Jan was Rybak established a tavern of the the Cape of Good Hope was first reported by Bartholomew Diaz in 1487, and in 1652, that's 1487, all of 513 and 52, 165 years. Jan van Riebeck established a Tavern of the Seas at Cape Town as a staging post for the Dutch East India Company. And we'll hear about the Dutch East India Company, because it's also had interests in Indonesia, as far out as Indonesia. At the time, the only inhabitants of what is now South Africa appeared to be the nomadic Bushmen. And South Africa appeared to be nomadic Bushmen and Hottentots. It was in the 18th century when the venturesome Dutch wartrekkers were pushing northwards, that equally adventurous Bantu tribes were moving, and South Africa was their control. Bantu tribes were moving south from Central and East Africa, and inevitably clashes followed, during which the indigenous nomads were squeezed out, fleeing to the Kalahari regions. There was an influx of French Huguenots in 1688, following the revoking of the Edict of Nantes, and this brought new skills and arts to the country. I think I'm going to stop there. Okay, that's South Africa, but I'll continue. But I had said I was going to... Now, I'll read one more paragraph. The British occupied the Cape in 1795, staying for 8 years before returning control to the Batavian Republic, Batavia. In 1820, 5,000 British settlers landed and settled in what later became the Eastern Cape and South Natal. This following the cession of the Cape to Britain by the Dutch in 1814. So the English took over from the Dutch in 1814. That's about 15 years afterwards. Began a period of dissatisfaction on the part of the Boers, which led to the Great Trek of 1835. So, in 1835, led to the Great Trek of 1835, when some 10,000 of them trekked north in a great convoy of covered wagons, each drawn by the central span of 16 oxen, in order to escape from the hated British rule and to found the new republics of the Orange Free State. So around this time, the Orange Free State came to be. So, for courage and hardihood, this epic exodus was on the parallel with the opening up of the Wild West in America. Clashes with the Bantu became frequent, and in 1838 there was a massacre of the Boers by the Zulus at Wenan, which was avenged on 16th of December that same year at the Battle of Blood River, where the Zulus were heavily defeated and the Boers finally won control of the country. We're going to stop there. So that's the beginning of South Africa. So the second one, because the first, this is more, this is quite interesting really, but it goes into the details of South Africa, and pardon me because I sort of checked it out, and then as I'm reading, I sort of thinking of something else and whether that information is up to date. So forgive me for that, but I will continue next week with this. And now another drink, and then we go to our Australian history. Because today we're looking for a voice in Parliament of Australia by our Indigenous people. However, exactly what is it that this voice will represent, we'll only find out in due course. We have a nation state called Australia and a constitution now, which for many years denied the existence of the local people. So in 1967, we had our first vote to recognise the Indigenous people of this country. It's, 67, that's 33 years up to 900, and 22 is 55 years. So it's not a very long time in which our Indigenous people have been recognised by the government of this country. Because the government of this country has developed laws from the arrogant, approach, if you like, the saying that Australia was a terra nullius, it was the land of nobody. Well, but they, with powers in general and with the wars, that's what happened. So, but Australia is a very particular country where you can't really have what? That's what we're going to find out. We're going to find out all these things. One thing that comes to mind straight away, that when now we have official functions, there are a lot of ceremonies that have come through from our Indigenous people. And this particular, I'm going to read a page about the ceremonies before the ceremonies of the Indigenous people before the arrival of Captain Arthur Phillips. So here we go. The sacred ceremonies of the Aborigines expressed their beliefs, their joys, their sorrow and their needs. Much of their art cave paintings, ground paintings, bark painting, body decorations, sacred objects were connected with the ceremonies. Much of the people's spare time was spent performing the ceremonies or preparing for them, or just talking about them. In each region of Australia, in the best season of the year, some great ceremony would be held. The Aborigines believed that the ancestral beings had first performed the sacred rituals and had taught these to their descendants. The people must perform them regularly forever after, in exactly the same way. This is why young people were taught them so exactly, and why they were punished if they made a mistake in the singing, the dancing, the decorations, or the making and handling of the sacred objects. Now, I'm not going to smack you or do anything at all. I've just read it. That's it. The ceremonies were dramas which reenacted the travels and doings of the ancestral beings. During each scene, the performers usually became those beings they were acting, with all their powers. The sacred objects they carried, their tracks and their body painting also became filled with this powder. The powder could be dangerous if used wrongly. For this reason, after a scene was finished, the objects were burnt or wrapped up and hidden away. The tracks were carefully smoothed. And the actors rubbed off or washed them off their body. Here we go. This I corroborate further down. Before the invasion, the Aborigines did not cultivate the land, plant crops, or keep animals. But they did change the land by fire stick farming. Interesting. I think, no, I'll just do a bit more. The tracks were carefully smoothed and the actors rubbed off or washed off their body paint. So once they finished, they washed them off. Before the invasion, the Aborigines did not cultivate the land, plant crops, or keep animals, but they did change the land by fire stick farming, it's called. This opened out the bush and made it better for hunting. They took what the land gave them, but had to perform the proper ceremonies for each of the ancestors, keep the laws, and follow the all right, I'll repeat. They took what the land gave them, but had to perform the proper ceremonies for each of the ancestors, of each one. Keep the laws and follow the behaviour that the ancestors had laid down, so that the land would continue to produce food for them and their own society would survive and prosper. So, it's like, it's a belief. If you do, if you dance in a particular way, you do a corroboree, etc., the gods will be pleased with you, and they'll allow you to extend extend what you want to do, I suppose. That's it for now, but there's more. There's a lot more on the ceremonies in terms of all this. Okay, so that's that. We now have two of our friends, Banjo Patterson and Henry Lawson. Okay, this is another poem by Banjo Patterson called The Old Australian Ways. Here we go. The Old Australian Ways. The London lights are far abeam behind a bank of cloud. Along the shore the gas lights gleam, the gale is piping loud. And down the channel, groping blind, we drive her through the haze towards the land we left behind, the good old land of Nevermind and old Australian ways. The narrow ways of English folk are not for such as we, they bear the long accustomed yoke of staid conservancy. But all our roads are new and strange, and though our blood there runs the vagabond love of change that drove us westward of the range and westwards of the suns. The city folk go to and fro behind our prisons, bars, they never feel the breeze blow and never see the stars. They never hear in blossomed trees the music low and sweet of wild birds making melodies, nor catch the little laughing breeze that whispers in the wheat. Our fathers came of roving stock that could not fixed abide, and we have followed field and flock since over we learned to ride. Since ever we learned to ride, by miners' camp and shearing shed, in land of heat and drought, we followed where our fortunes led, with fortune always on the head and always further out. Not much success, I suppose. The wind is in the barley grass, the wattles are in bloom. The breeze greet us as they pass with honey sweet perfume. The parakeets go screaming by with the flash of golden wing, and from the swamp the wild duck cry their long-drawn note of revelry, rejoicing at the spring. So throw the weary pen aside and let the papers rest, for we must settle up and ride towards the blue hill's breast. And we must travel far and fast across their rugged maze to find the spring of youth at last and call back and call back from the buried past the old Australian ways. When Clancy took the drover's track in years of long ago, he drifted to the outer back beyond the overflow. By rolling plains and rocky shelf, with stock whip in his hand, he reached at last, oh lucky elf, the town of Come and Help Yourself in rough and ready land. As if it be that you would know the tracks you used to ride, then you must settle up and go beyond the Queensland side. Go and grab him, I suppose. Beyond the reach of rule of law, to ride the long day through, in nature's homestead filled with awe, you then might see what Clancy saw and know what Clancy knew. That's it. Well, this is, going to England and thinking back in Australia and the changes, comparing London with the countryside in Australia. A lot of reflections here. A lot of reflections. Good job, Banjo Patterson. Very good. Thank you. Now, the last one is, of course, Henry Lawson. And this is The Union Buries Its Dead. And we start here. Where do we start? The hearse was drawn up and the tailboards were opened. The funeral extinguished its right ear with its hat as four men lifted the coffin out and laid it over the grave. The priest, a pale, quite young fellow, stood under the shade of a sapling which grew at the head of the grave. He took off his hat, dropped it carelessly on the ground and proceeded to the business. I noticed that one or two heathens winced slightly when the holy water was sprinkled on the coffin. The drops quickly evaporated and the little round black spots they left were soon dusted over, but the spots showed by contrast cheapness and shabbiness of the cloth with which the coffin was covered. It seemed black before, now it looked a dusky grey. Oh well. How the Unions buries his dead. Remember that title. Just here, men's ignorance and vanity made a farce of the funeral. A big bull-necked publican with heavy blotchy features and a supremely ignorant expression picked up the priest's straw hat and held it in about 2 inches over the head of his reverence during the whole of the service. The father, be it remembered, was standing in the shade. A few shoved their hats on and off uneasily. Struggling with the disgust, show the past. No, the father, be it remembered, was standing in the shade. A few shoved their hats on and off uneasily, struggling between their disgust for the living and their respect for the dead. The hut had a conical crown and a brim sloping down, all round like a sunshade, and the publican held it with his great red claw, spread it over the crowds, and the publican held it with his great red claw spread over the crown. To the priest justice, perhaps he didn't notice to do the priest justice, perhaps he did not notice the incident. A stage priest or parson in the same position might have said, "Put the hat down, my friend, is not the memory of our prepared one." Put the hat down, my friend, it is not the memory of our departed brother worth more than my complexion. A wattle bark layman might have expressed himself in stronger language, none the less to the point, but my priest seemed unconscious of what was going on. Besides the politician, besides the publican, was a great and important pillar of the church. He couldn't, as an ignorant and considered ass, lose such a good opportunity of asserting his faithfulness and importance to his church. So the publican, they say they don't believe, but in the end, they go along with things. And this is how much we got now. We got another page, which I will read next week. So that's it. That's another one for Henry Lawson. Thank you very much for following me so far. Now, we said, if you remember, that the last part of this world history is dedicated to Australia. And my travelling, of course, is an important part of this process. And here we go, going back. Oh, we're here. We're here. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So last week we started here. We finish off here on this screenshot. This is the screenshot. See that? And now we continue our journey. This is the next day. And this is Western Australia, Australia's northwest. And we're on the 15th of July here. And this is what we see along the way to the next part. More water. Yeah, it's all right. There we go. That's pretty. Look at the baobab tree. Where are we here? Here, read it. Yaworong mirwong, Womberemendawan nari, Gundengi barenku, Gunanjim miriwonga dawanga. There you are. Welcome from the Miriwong people. And this is history of the Ord River project. Ord River. This is the Ord River project. Welcome. This place, Durham, is Miriwong country. Please respect and look after this land of ours. So can you read it? Yaningu Jenjayinga Dawang Daram Miriwongta Wunju Barungu Dawang Yowariyanga. Wow. There's an effort. See, as long as the alphabet is romanized, then we can access anything. Any of the languages which have got different scripts. Okay, here we go. Ord River diversion. Diversion. Ord River diversion dam. Can you see that? I suppose when you're there, it's different. But it gives you an idea of the dam and how they stop the water, divert the water to wherever they want. So this is it here. This is the Ord River. You going to say something? No, yes. That's the driver there at the back. There you are. This is still Lake Argyll country, northwest of Australia. More baobab trees. Beautiful. Look at the colour. I think, oh, here we are. I love books. Whenever I have to always make sure that I capture some. The hats, look at that. Shorts. Cup holders. This was called Dun Dun. Yeah. Look at the rocks, huh? What a great picture. Yes, unbelievable. The little caves in there. One there. I didn't check it. Bango, bango. And we went on the plane afterwards. I think we were the last ones. Oh, what did I do there? So I went to the town first and then came back. We're in the last bangle bangle flight. Warmun is called. W-A-R-M-U-N. Warmun. This old river. Oh, old river. We have enough of this. Look at it, burnt here. I wonder what happened before. Look at the trees, huh? The various landscapes, but there's one element that goes right through them. It's called solitude. There's nobody around. Okay. And these are mounds. What are they called? This, what are they called? Insects. Flea. I'm still struggling with remembering what they're called. A few people working. They're enlarging the road or fixing it up on the side. You know, there's always some sort of work involved. Here we are. Fitzroy Crossing, Nicholson, Wave Hill. Okay, look at that. This is the plane. Oh, this is interesting now. This Halls Creek Motel. So we're in Halls Creek now, and I think we stopped at a grocery store. I was attracted by these inscriptions. It's an old one. Right? Look at the cows. Huh? Interesting. There they are. Local grocer. This is Shawla. Locally, you know. Oh yeah, this is Halls Creek. And that's the plane there. Small one. Very nice. I forgot my hat in the plane and they sent it to me. Thank you very much. There's a plane. Oh, well, it looks like that. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, that's just a quick photo. Wow. Yes. Well, there's a pilot. It was very good. He got us in the air. There we are. He didn't mind me filming. But the sky is a bit like the sea in that, you're up there and you're looking down and it's far away, so the details aren't there, but you get a good idea of how things go. There we are. once we're in the air, there. Once we're in the air, I will. Let me see. We're up in the air. I think that's about it for today. We're going to stop there, I think. Here's a little ball. Okay, we'll stop there. One last one. Just this one here. Well, that's it. I mean, today has been a bit, it's always an experience when you do this. We'll continue from there, and next week we'll have lesson 60, and we'll look at, at the sky, really. I mean, it's great. In a small plane, 5 people, it's a bit scary. But they do it all the time, so I suppose, you have to take the risk now and then. Okay, so on this note, thank you very much for today, and I appreciate anyone who comes on, of course. This is World History with Tom Padula on YouTube, TomPadulaTV on YouTube, and Insegna Booksellers. Until next time, ciao.